Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Silhouette Sunday video. I know it's been a while, but I'm back with a Valentine's Day project that I'm working on. And today's project is going to be super easy. And really that's because I've noticed that I've had an influx of new subscribers, and they're mostly new silhouette owners. So I figured a good project to do would be something that would be really easy for a beginner to follow along with. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. In today's video, I'm just going to be doing some cutting out of names to go on the front of jars. So I'm going to select my text tool here on the left hand side, and I'm going to click on my digital mat. Now it's kind of half hanging off, and that's okay. I'll move it here in a minute and type in the first name that I'm going to use. And the first one is for Abigail, and the font that I'm going to use is called Superhero, and I already know that it looks better in all caps. So I've gone ahead and I've put my caps lock on, and I'm going to type her name. And like I said before, I can move this. So I'm going to go ahead and click and just move this so it's back on my digital mat. And to change the font, I'm going to highlight the entire thing. And there are two places where I can change this font. I can do it up here at the top menu where it says Lucida Grand, or Lucida Grand, depending on who you ask. Or I can go over to the text style menu on the right hand side and click, and then I'll get more options. So up here it's just a quick, I want to change the font and potentially the size. Here is more options in terms of letter spacing, character spacing, line spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the font that I'm looking for. So it's Superhero. And I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, and you can see that it's really small. Now I can change the actual size of the font here to an actual, like you would in a Word document, point size, or you can just select the word and make it bigger. Now I already know that the space that I need to occupy is 4.5 by 2.5 inches. So I'm not going to go much bigger than this because I know this will fit roughly in the space allotted. So there's the first name. Now for the second name, I'm going to be using a script font called Marshmallow. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that text tool again, and then click on my mat. And this one is for Kashaya. And I accidentally left my caps lock on, so I need to turn that off. So I have her name typed out. I'm going to highlight everything again, and I can select the font here on the right hand side or up here at the top, either one. And you can actually scroll through the list if you don't know what kind of font you want to use. But since I already have identified the fonts I'm using, I'm just going to type the name of the font in. Or is it called Marshmallow? It might be called Marshmallow. Either way, I'll link it down below. So I have the font here, and for the most part, the letters are connected pretty well, but I'm going to move them just a little bit. So I'm going to right click on the name and go to ungroup. And now I can move these letters in isolation. So you can see each one has its own box around it, but I don't want to move all of them at once, because if I click on my arrow keys, for example, they'll all move together, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on individual letters that I want to move. So for example, I want this S to be a little straighter, so I'm going to move that over. Same thing with this H. So I'm going to move it. Now the I and the A look pretty good, so I'm going to draw a box around both of them and then use my arrow keys to just move them over. I'm going to tilt this A a little bit, and then this K I'm going to tilt as well and move it a little closer in. And actually looking at this, I think I prefer for this K to actually be a little larger. So I'm going to make it a little bigger. So once I'm happy with the way it looks, I'm going to draw a box around everything, right click, and then I'm actually just going to group this together for a moment because I want to see how big it is. Remember I was saying I know the size that I'm working with is approximately 4.5 by 2.5. So I want to make sure that I'm still in that range. So I actually can make this a little bit bigger. And once I'm happy with the way it looks, I can go ahead and I can weld this together. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down to weld. So now everything is going to cut connected. Now I still have some individual shapes. The K, the ASHIA, and the dot on the I are separate. If you want those to all be connected together, you're going to right click and you're going to go back to group so that you can move this as one image. So now that that is all set, I'm going to load my material into my silhouette and cut this out. While choosing my material, I decided that I wanted to use a heat transfer vinyl instead of a different material as originally planned. Now, in order to use this particular material, the directions specifically say to cut my design in the reverse. So what I'm going to do is take my mouse and draw a box around both of these names. And my textile window is still open, so I'm going to close that out because I don't need it. Then I'm going to select the replicate panel, and it looks like a flower on the right-hand side. And I'm going to mirror to the right. And now I have my names in the reverse. So here I can click and I can move both of them over, and you can see now it's the reverse or the backwards of what it looked like before. And I don't need this up here, this stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around everything and just hit delete on my keyboard, and then draw a box around the two names in the reverse. And now they are ready to be cut out of this particular material. Here you can see I have my two names all cut out, and I've actually cut them apart just to make them easier to work with and weed. So I'm going to start with Abigail's, and the first thing I'm going to do is use my silhouette pick tool to get a piece of the heat transfer vinyl up so that I can peel the entire thing back all at once. Once you get it started, it's actually fairly easy to peel large pieces of the heat transfer material away from the backer. And once I have all of the large section removed, I'm going to go back in with my silhouette tool and pick out the small pieces in between each letter. Now, because this is heat transfer vinyl, you have to make sure that you get everything out. Otherwise, you will inadvertently adhere something down to your project that you don't intend to have there. Here is the jar that I'm using for the project. It's actually from Target, from Bullseye's Playground. I believe it was $3. And the reason I ended up choosing the material that I chose was because it matched the knob on top perfectly. So I'm going to take the name that I've weeded out, and you can see at this point I've actually weeded both names, and I'm going to lay it down on the jar. Now the heat transfer material has a slightly tacky back, so it will lay down flat on the jar without you using any additional adhesive. So once I have the name laid down smoothly on the jar and laying flat so that there's no creases or bubbles, I'm going to take my petite press and transfer the name off of the backer sheet. Now, the nice thing about the petite press is that it has a small plate and it reaches very high temperatures, which is perfect for ceramic type things, but it does take quite a bit of time. So I'm going to leave the iron on each letter for a minute or so before moving on and overlapping the design. At this point, I've gone over the name several times with my petite press, and I'm ready to remove the carrier sheet. So I'm just going to carefully peel it away from the jar, making sure to watch for any portion of the design that hasn't transferred. And at this point, because I've ironed it for so long, it actually transferred off in one session. I didn't have to go over any of the small pieces. But here is a look at the final product. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.